Hello everyone. Welcome to this series on web development using MERN stack. So that is a full stack web development in MERN. So before discussing what is MERN stack and what is the technology stack for the same, let us understand what is a full stack web development. So full stack web development aims at developing an application both with the front end and the back end. So then what is a front end, right? So a front end is the web components which the end user visually sees on the output. That is on your browser. Now, let us say you are using an e-commerce application. So what are the visual components we see in a visually in an e-commerce application? So we would see some components like buttons, text, some headings, videos, all these stuffs, right? And also something like validation, right? So you give your username, password, and you click on a button. So all these components will be created via front-end technologies, right? So the most popular technologies which are used for developing your front end is HTML, CSS, and there are from some frameworks like Bootstrap, and also some validations with the JavaScript, right? So these technologies consist of the front end. So in this course, we will be discussing what is HTML, what is CSS, Bootstrap, JavaScript. And according to the framework, that is to the MERN, we'll also be discussing what is React.js. Okay, what is React.js framework? It is also a front-end framework, which we'll be discussing in the future, right? Now coming to the backend. Now what is a backend is? Backend is the processing unit, which is serving all the user requests. So whatever the user is requesting from the front end, through your forms or through some user interactive elements, the data will be carried by your backend, and also it will be processed by your backend and stores in the database, retrieves the database, or does any manipulation with the data. So backend is purely with how you're going to create your APIs, how you're going to handle the user request, and it's going to be how the data is manipulated or how it is stored in the databases. So all these is going to be consisted in your backend. And what are the technologies we will be learning in backend is Node.js, Express, and MongoDB. So these are some technologies which we are going to learn for your front end and the back end. And together we are going to learn a full stack web development. So as we know, so the prerequisite for developing any web application in the case is going to be HTML, right? So in this video, let us start with learning HTML and how you're going to create your static web pages using HTML. So let's start it. So now we are going to discuss what is HTML. So let us understand how the web works, right? So what is a web architecture basically? So anything you request on the browser, let us say, for example, I'm going in Google search and I'm searching for Visual Studio Code, which is the editor which you are going to use, right? So you give some search text, right? So this is being processed and the results are shown to the front and back again. So this is the overall processing, how any website would work, right? Even if you go to an e-commerce application, let us say you go to Amazon or you go to Flipkart or any application, you search for something, you get a result back, right? So we call this as a request response architecture, right? So this is how the entire web is going to work. Okay, it's purely based on how you're requesting for a resource and how that is retrieved and given back as a response, and how do you put it on the browser. Now, whatever I say, let us take the website of the Visual Studio Code, right? So this is a web application for the official web application for the Visual Studio Code. So here you can see there are a lot of contents which are represented on your browser, right? So basically why people started using web browsers? Okay, that is a question, right? So basically to advertise your service or a product, as simple as that, right? So people before, they were using pamphlets or some brochures to advertise their products or services, but everything is digitalized now. Everything is moved to web now. So it is also used for organizing your content. Just structure your web contents as a web page. Now, how do you view your web page? You view your web page through a web browser, right? So what are the contents we are seeing here? Like you have some text, you have some links, you have some buttons, you have a close button, you have a search box, right? So these are some components we are visually seeing it on the web application. So HTML is meant for creating these components, right? It is used for structuring your document. It's just going to create the contents, whatever you want to display on your web browser as a web page, right? So let us see what is HTML, right? HTML is nothing but it's hypertext markup language. Okay, now what is hypertext, right? So let us break down these things into three different things: hypertext, markup, language, right? So what is hypertext? Hypertext is any multimedia types you're going to display it on the web application, right? So I already gave you an example of that website, right? So what are the types of data we have seen? Like what are the visual components we have seen? It can be a text, it can be a video, it can be audio, it can be some buttons, it can be some form elements, tables, and so on, right? So all these things are nothing but the hypertext media types which you can display on the browser, right? Now going on to the next, what is marking up? So what is markup is you're creating all these hypertext, but it has to be marked up to your browser, right? Now, browser is a software where you visually see all your contents, right? You're not using any other special software, or you're not installing a web application and viewing it like a mobile application, like any Android application, some sort, right? Everything is viewed on a browser, right? So it means that whatever contents you're going to structure, whatever content you have created, you're just going to mark up to the web, right? You're just going to display it to the browser. So that is what we call it as marking up, right? Or just hooking this hypertext to your browser. Okay, now I'll tell you how these things is working when we discuss about DOM. Okay, so that is marking up, right? It is just hooking your hypertext to your browser. Now, languages, it's a markup language, right? So in general, we call programming language, scripting language. So it's not either a programming or a scripting language. It is just a markup language, which is used for structuring. It is just used for creating your web application structure alone. Okay, when I'm talking about structure alone, you can ask a question, ma'am, then what is a structure, right? So what is a structure is, it is just going to tell about the content. Okay, it is not going to tell how you're going to style your elements, how you're going to place your elements, or what are the user actions you're going to give to your elements. Okay, it will just display you the contents alone. So that is what we call it as markup, right? So HTML, what it does, it is going to structure your content, right? But it is not going to style it. Okay. So I'll tell you who's going to style it, which technology are you going to use for styling it, because styling means you have to give some nice colors or text format or your font size or your how you're aligning the elements. All these things will come under your style, right? But sadly, HTML is not going to do the styling. It will be taken care by CSS only. So as of now, the takeaway from your HTML is it is just going to structure your content. It is just going to mark up your contents to your browser, right? So if this is clear, we'll just move on to the next part. That is going to be, we are just going to create a very first web application and start discussing how to write HTML.